Vanessa Marcotte was just 27 years old when her life was cut short in a quiet Massachusetts town. She had gone out for a simple run on a familiar trail not far from her mother's home on August 7, 2016. It was a sunny afternoon, and nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Vanessa was in a place she knew well, and that made everyone feel a little safer. But when hours passed and she didn't return, her loved ones grew anxious. That worry quickly turned into heartbreak when her body was found about half a mile from the house. What happened to Vanessa shocked not just her town, but people across the country. In many friend groups, especially among women, there's a sort of unspoken rule: never go anywhere alone, especially not at night or in unfamiliar places. But Vanessa was out during the day, in a place she knew. It was supposed to be safe. Her story is a haunting reminder that danger can find anyone, anywhere, even in broad daylight, even close to home. Vanessa Marcotte was born on June 17, 1989, in Massachusetts. She was the only child of her parents, John and Rosanna Marcotte. From a young age, she showed signs of being bright and driven. She was active, loved sports, and had a deep love for the outdoors. Nature made her feel alive, and her family shared that passion, often traveling together to beaches and mountains. Those who knew her described her as kind, full of energy, and someone you could always depend on. She was thoughtful, responsible, and genuinely loved life. But behind her joyful spirit, Vanessa had also been through some emotional changes. Her parents' divorce during her early years was a difficult chapter. The breakdown of their marriage changed her world in ways she didn't expect. Still, she remained strong and focused, building a life for herself that reflected her values and personality. That strength, though, would be tested in the worst way. What should have been a regular jog turned into a nightmare no one saw coming. Even after her parents separated, Vanessa stayed very close to both of them. She understood that their family structure had changed, but she never let that stop her from being the same warm, loving person everyone admired. Still, sadness shows up in different ways for different people, and no one really knew what darkness might be waiting around the corner. Vanessa was focused on her future. After finishing high school, she went on to study communications at Boston University. She excelled in her studies and graduated with honors in 2011. Not long after, she landed a job at WordStream, a company that specialized in digital marketing tools. Later, she gained more experience working at Vistaprint, learning the ins and outs of business and marketing. These weren't just random jobs. Vanessa had a clear goal in mind. She wanted to work at Google. In 2015, that dream came true. Vanessa got a position as an account manager at Google in New York City. It was everything she had worked for, but it also meant moving away from the people she loved the most. As an only child, leaving her mother and extended family behind was painful. Still, she knew she had to chase her dream. Even after the move, she made sure to visit her mother and aunt in Princeton, Massachusetts about twice a year. Her mother, Rosanna, always looked forward to these visits. Princeton was a quiet town in Worcester County, home to fewer than 3,500 residents. Everyone knew one another, and serious crime was nearly unheard of. In fact, the last major crime in Princeton had occurred almost 3 decades earlier. It was the kind of place people felt safe walking alone. That peaceful image, though, would be shattered forever. On August 7, 2016, Vanessa was visiting her mother and preparing to return to New York later that day. As usual, she planned to catch a bus and head back to the city for a new work week. But first, she wanted to squeeze in one more run. Fitness had always been part of her routine. She loved jogging, yoga, and anything that kept her moving. That Sunday afternoon, she left her mother's house on Brook Station Road and headed for the nearby trail she often used. It was nothing unusual for Vanessa. She had run that same path many times before. But when evening came and she still hadn't returned, her mother began to worry. Vanessa hadn't packed her things, hadn't called, and wasn't answering her phone. That wasn't like her at all. She was always punctual, always responsible. Something felt very wrong. Rosanna's worry grew into fear. She contacted the police to report Vanessa missing. In a small town like Princeton, authorities acted quickly. If Vanessa was hurt or lost, every second counted. Officers began searching the area immediately, hoping that they would find her safe and sound. Police officers, volunteers, and a trained canine unit began searching the woods where Vanessa was last seen. As they moved deeper into the forest, the trees and brush grew thicker. The search focused on the popular jogging trail near Brook Station Road, where Vanessa had gone for her run. It was around 8:20 p.m., and the daylight was fading fast. Just when hope was starting to thin, one of the dogs caught a scent and led the officers to a heartbreaking discovery. There, in the woods, less than half a mile from her mother's home, they found a body. It was clear immediately that this wasn't just a missing persons case, it was a brutal crime. The woman had been beaten badly, her body left unclothed, and there were visible burn marks on her face, arms, legs, and chest. Near her was a partially burned running shoe. Injuries on her neck showed she had been strangled by hand. When investigators confirmed the identity of the victim, the news hit hard. It was Vanessa Marcotte. Her family was informed right away. For Rosanna, the shock was too much to bear. Her worst fear had come true. Her daughter had been attacked and murdered in the very neighborhood she had grown up in, just minutes away from home. The peaceful image of Princeton shattered overnight. The town that hadn't seen a serious crime in nearly 30 years was now the center of a horrifying investigation. Rosanna and John Marcotte were left devastated, unable to understand how someone could target their kind, energetic daughter who had done nothing more than go for a run on a quiet afternoon. The police knew from the beginning this was no accident. The state of Vanessa's body, and the attempt to burn it, told them the killer had tried to destroy evidence. This was intentional. It was a violent, calculated act. And whoever did it was still out there. Detectives worked urgently. They feared that if they didn't find the person responsible quickly, another woman could be in danger. Vanessa's body was sent for an autopsy, and investigators began combing through the scene for any clues. That's when they found something important: traces of DNA on Vanessa's body and nearby evidence. The DNA was immediately sent for testing and compared against profiles in the National Criminal Database. Investigators also narrowed down the time of the attack. Vanessa had left her mother's house in the early afternoon, and experts estimated the assault occurred between 1 and 3 p.m. That meant she had been killed not long after she stepped onto the trail she thought was safe. The area where Vanessa's body was found was quiet and isolated, a perfect spot for someone with dark intentions to commit a terrible act without being seen. When police examined the scene, they noticed several of Vanessa's belongings were missing. Her phone, headphones, and clothes were all gone. Investigators believed the killer had taken these items to make it harder to trace them or uncover clues. As detectives searched further, they made a disturbing discovery. They found traces of petrol near the crime scene, which confirmed their suspicion: the fire had been set on purpose, likely to destroy evidence. But despite the attempt to cover up the crime, forensic experts uncovered something crucial. Under Vanessa's fingernails, they found DNA. This was a strong sign that Vanessa had fought back in her final moments. Her resistance gave investigators hope. The presence of defensive wounds suggested she had scratched or injured her attacker. Because of this, police began looking for men who might have fresh scratches or bruises, especially on their faces or arms. The brutality of the crime, and the way Vanessa's body had been left exposed and violated, suggested that it was a deeply emotional and personal attack. Still, detectives didn't believe the killer was someone Vanessa knew. This made the situation even more terrifying. A random, senseless act of violence, committed in broad daylight, in a small, peaceful town, left the entire community shaken. Why would anyone do this to Vanessa, who had no enemies and had simply gone for a run? With few solid leads, police decided to go public. They hoped that media attention would bring forward witnesses or tips. Just 4 days after Vanessa's body was found, on August 11, 2016, Worcester District Attorney Joseph Early Jr. held a press conference. He urged the people of Princeton to stay alert and report anything suspicious. The killer, he warned, was still out there. Detectives also gave the public a general description of the man they were looking for. Based on the evidence, he was likely between 20 and 30 years old and could have cuts or bruises from the struggle. Police encouraged anyone who had seen something unusual on the day of the murder, August 7, to come forward. They set up a special tip line and began following every possible lead. As the days went by, police received hundreds of tips, nearly 1,300 in total. Many were vague or unhelpful, but 2 stood out. The first came from a woman who said she saw Vanessa at the Mountainside Market on Hubbardston Road around 1 p.m. that Sunday. Vanessa was on her phone and drinking water. That matched the timeline. The second tip was far more disturbing. Another person reported seeing a dark-colored vehicle trailing Vanessa as she jogged. The car was moving slowly and seemed to be following her intentionally, not even bothering to hide it. It was unsettling. Sadly, this person hadn't reported what they saw until after the news of Vanessa's death broke, maybe because they thought she knew the driver, or maybe because Princeton had always felt so safe. But that tip changed everything. Investigators shifted focus and began tracing information about that car. At the same time, a strange connection emerged, one that drew national attention. A similar murder had taken place just days earlier in New York City. Karina Vetrano, a 30-year-old woman, had also been jogging when she was attacked in a park in Queens. Like Vanessa, Karina was found naked, strangled, and her body had been treated with cruelty. The parallels were too strong to ignore. Could the same person have followed Vanessa from New York to Princeton? It was possible. Vanessa lived in NYC, and both victims were young, fit, and independent women. Their cases sent a wave of fear through two entire states. The FBI joined the investigation and shared their insight. They believed that whoever killed Vanessa either lived in Princeton or was very familiar with it. The person knew the remote backroads, the nearby shops, and how to disappear without being seen. Meanwhile, detectives pulled Vanessa's phone records. Her device had been switched off at 2:11 p.m., right around the time she was believed to have been attacked. This helped narrow the investigation to a crucial window. Then came a breakthrough, 3 months after the crime. A witness came forward, reporting that they had seen a black Ford vehicle with its hood up parked near the area where Vanessa's body was found. Inside was a Hispanic man in his mid-20s to early 30s. When the witness returned later, the car was still there, but now the hood was down, and the driver was gone. The story raised alarm bells. Police issued a bolo, "Be on the lookout," for the black SUV. 3 more months passed, and then, on February 23, 2017, a major update was released. Remember the DNA found under Vanessa's fingernails? Forensic testing had created a genetic profile of her attacker. The man was Hispanic, in his 20s or 30s, with short hair, likely from the local area, and possibly driving a black SUV. The public was asked again to help. And just a few weeks later, in March 2017, a sharp-eyed police officer spotted a black Ford SUV that matched the description. Behind the wheel was a man who also matched the DNA-based profile. That moment would be the beginning of justice. The officer who spotted the black SUV didn't hesitate. He wrote down the license plate number and ran it through the system. The name that came back was Angelo Ortiz. Angelo was a 31-year-old man from Puerto Rico who had recently moved to Worcester, Massachusetts, with his wife and 3 children. He worked as a delivery driver for a third-party FedEx contractor, which explained how he knew the Princeton area so well. He had delivered packages there for months. On the surface, Angelo kept to himself. He showed up to work, did his job, and didn't raise any red flags with the law. But once police began asking around, a darker picture emerged. Coworkers described him as crude, even predatory. He made vulgar and degrading remarks about women in Spanish, assuming, wrongly, that no one around him understood. One female coworker shared a chilling memory. She said Angelo had once made offensive comments about her and another woman right in front of them. She understood every word. "I had to deal with him alone," she said. "Thank God nothing happened, but he gave me the creeps." With suspicions building, police paid Angelo a visit. Since he didn't speak English well, a bilingual officer conducted the interview. Angelo claimed he had no idea who Vanessa was and said he hadn't been in Princeton on the day she was attacked. The officer then asked if he would voluntarily give a DNA sample. To everyone's shock, Angelo agreed. He signed the consent forms and handed over a sample without hesitation. And that's when it all came together. Angelo Ortiz's DNA matched the sample found under Vanessa's fingernails. After nearly a year of unanswered questions, investigators finally had a suspect. On August 15, 2017, Angelo was arrested and officially charged with the murder of Vanessa Marcotte. The bail was set at $10 million, an amount meant to ensure he couldn't slip through the cracks and disappear. But even after his arrest, the horror of that day continued to unfold. Police traced Angelo's movements on August 7, 2016. At 2:35 p.m., roughly 20 minutes after Vanessa's phone went dark, he was seen at a store just 6 miles from the crime scene, purchasing exactly $5 worth of petrol. That same petrol, investigators believe, was used to set fire to Vanessa's body. The timeline was painfully clear. Angelo had spotted Vanessa while she was jogging and impulsively decided to attack. He pulled over, possibly pretending his vehicle had broken down. Then he ambushed her, assaulting, beating, and dragging her more than 60 yards into the woods. There, in that secluded place, he raped and murdered her, leaving her naked body in the brush. The items Vanessa had on her, her clothes, her phone, her headphones, were never recovered. Investigators believe Angelo may have disposed of them to cover his tracks or sold them for quick cash. The details were sickening, but at least now, there was a name, a face, and finally, the start of justice. What hurts the most isn't just that Vanessa Marcotte was killed, it's that it happened so suddenly, so senselessly, without warning. The idea that someone like Angelo Ortiz could spot a young woman jogging, decide he wanted her, and then take her life with such brutality is beyond horrifying. It leaves us questioning how something so monstrous could come from a moment so ordinary. The Marcotte family has been left to carry this pain every single day. Their world was shattered, their daughter stolen. And yet, from their grief, they chose purpose. In 2017, they founded the Vanessa T. Marcotte Foundation, a living tribute to Vanessa's strength, spirit, and love for life. What started as a platform to seek justice for Vanessa has since grown into a powerful force for good. The foundation now works to educate, protect, and empower women, teaching self-defense and bringing awareness to the daily threats women face, from harassment to violent crimes. Vanessa's story has become a rallying cry for safety and respect. And still, what makes it all the more devastating is the fact that she didn't even know her killer. She had no connection to Angelo. There was no motive, no reason, just a man driven by dark urges who decided her life meant nothing. He saw a woman running alone and thought, I want that. No care for who she was, what dreams she held, or the family who loved her. Just an opportunity to satisfy his sick hunger for control and domination. Colleagues of Angelo described him as someone who didn't just disrespect women, he dehumanized them. He spoke about them like they were toys to use and discard. And in Vanessa's case, that's exactly what he did. But her memory isn't discarded. It's honored. And through her story, other women are learning how to defend themselves. They're becoming more aware, more vigilant. They're finding strength in Vanessa's name. It's chilling to think how random and unprovoked her murder was. But it's even more powerful to see how her legacy has defied that cruelty. Because in the end, Vanessa's name now stands for strength, justice, and the power of love turned into action. Vanessa Marcotte's story is one of unimaginable pain, loss, and injustice. Her life, filled with promise and purpose, was cut short in the most brutal way imaginable by a man who showed no remorse. While her killer now sits behind bars, no sentence can ever bring back the light Vanessa brought into the world. Her family's strength and unwavering pursuit of justice remind us that even in darkness, there is resilience. Warning disclaimer: this story is based on real-life events surrounding the murder of Vanessa Marcotte. The information presented has been adapted for narrative clarity and emotional impact but stays faithful to the known facts. Names, timelines, and statements are reflective of public records, media coverage, and official court documents. This retelling is intended for educational and awareness purposes only. Viewer discretion is advised due to sensitive content.